All right, so 12.6 is going to piggyback onto what we did yesterday with 12.5. 12.5 was finding the average, the mean, the fair balanced value of a group of information or a group of data. Now, you may see me take a drink every once in a while. I did a little bit of loud coaching yesterday at wrestling conferences, so my voice is straining now that I'm doing my second video of this morning. So just be patient with me. When we talk about measures of center, though, I want you to think back before Christmas when I introduced the idea of mean, median, mode, and range. So yesterday we did mean, which we'll look at here in just a second, but median is really what we're talking about when it comes to the definition at the top of the page. The definition at the top of that page for 12.6 says a measure of center is a single value used to describe the middle of the data set. The measure of center can be a useful way to summarize a data set, especially when the data set is large. So what was the middle number of the group, and then you can find it. But that data set has to have my information put in a specific way. The book doesn't introduce that to you right off the bat, but I'm going to, because I'm going to first, as we talk about looking at data sets, review what we talked about yesterday. So what was yesterday's lesson? So once again, yesterday's lesson was 12.5, because today's is 12.6. 12.5 was finding what? Finding the mean, right? So we talked about finding that fair share balance, that average, that mean, where I take the total value of my data, so I add them all together, and then I divide by how many are there. So when I had these 5 different stacks, and I found their total of 20, and then I divided by 5, because they had to be put into 5 even stacks, then I found that each stack needed to have 4. So my mean, once again, is finding the average. Taking the total of all my data and information, then dividing by how many are there in the data group. The median, the center value, is a little different. I'm going to have my numbers, number one, in a very specific way when I begin to do this information. Now, I jump ahead a little bit on my slides because I want to introduce you to how to set this up correctly, other than just have the numbers and then we're going to change it. Notice on this example, this is not in your book, it's just on the video for you to learn from, so please pay attention. Feel free to write it down in the spaces of your book if you want to take notes. But they're in a chronological or a numerical order. They go from least to greatest. And I do indeed have 2 of them that are the same, and that is fine. I just make sure that they are side by side. If they were jumbled up, and I simply asked you which one is in the middle, I could have any of those numbers in the middle because they're not in the correct order. But if I take my data and I write it down first in numerical order, which I'm going to ask you to do on your assignments, then finding the middle becomes very easy. Now, there are 2 different scenarios that I end up with. First, let's look at the idea of what median means. The idea of median, if you've ever paid attention to street signs when your mom and dad are traveling somewhere, or maybe they've talked about the term, the median, once again, is the center grass area between highways, usually north and southbound lanes or east and west lanes. The median is the middle. You'll see signs that say no parking in the median, or stay off the median, or no U-turns in the median. Because that location there is for emergency vehicles or like police officers and things like that. They don't want people to be driving in there because number one, it's rough, and number 2, it's not safe. But it gives a free access in case there is an emergency for someone to have to be able to use. This is the center of our 2 highways. I have 2 lanes and 2 lanes, so it's right in the center of all the traffic that we have. When I make sure that it's in the middle, then I know I have a balance on each side. It's kind of what we talked about with the idea of mean and fair share balance. I want what's in the middle. I want my middle number. Not necessarily going to be my mean or my average like we talked about yesterday, but if I put them in numerical order. The easy one is when there's an odd number of data. Data, once again, is just the numbers that I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's pretty easy when I put them in numerical order or chronological order from least to greatest, because then I'm just going to start marking them off from left to right, until I get to the middle, or I could just count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I see 6 as my middle. Some students prefer to literally cross them off. And I am fine with that. Start with the left, cross one off on the right. Cross one off, cross one off on the right. Cross one off, cross one off on the right. What do I get in my middle? I get a 6. So my median is 6 for that group. Now, where that changes, and I have to add a little bit of math to it, is the understanding that on a median, I can only have one number. And if I have an even number of data in my data set, that kind of throws it off. Because if I start crossing off 1 and 1, 1 and 1, 1, and I end up with 2 numbers. I have a 4 and a 5. And I can't have more than one number in my median of my data set. So they show you the math that we do. We simply add the 2 numbers we end up with. They don't have to be right next to each other like a 4 and a 5. It could be a 7 and 11 are my 2 middle numbers. But I'm going to add those 2 together and then divide by 2. Sometimes I end up with an even number. Sometimes I end up with a decimal, or you could write it as a fraction number, a mixed number. But when I add 4 and 5 together from this data set, I get 9, and I have to then just simply divide that by 2 to find out what the median, actual median would be of my data set. And that would be 4.5, or you could write it as 4.5. Right? So we're just finding that, the middle. Then I go to the word mode. And mode, I want you to think about the idea of the word most. Most starts with an M-O. So does the word mode. It starts with an M-O. And that's why mode means most. They go together, hand in hand, mean the same thing. If I look at a data set, then I have to see which one is there the most. How often. The one that is repeated. When I look at example 1, there isn't one. They're all there. So we're going to be talking about how there's just simply no mode. I can't have a mode. But could I have more than one mode? I could have more than one mode, and we'll see that in the review questions. But on this one then, for the example 2, when I look at it, I see that I have 3 of the exact same number. Now, I would have preferred to have been able to find an example that had them in order, like I mentioned before, chronologically, but I couldn't find a good example that included the no mode and then one mode. But you get the idea, and we'll look at it as we go on. But my mode is what number is listed the most often. I could have 2 numbers that are listed 3 times, and therefore I'd have 2 modes. I could have 3 modes, I could have 4 modes, depending on how many data points that I have. The final one then is the idea of range. And range is probably the easy one out of all the 4, mean, median, mode, and range. Range is asking me simply from my smallest number to my largest number. That once again lets me put them in order from least to greatest, chronological order. I simply subtract them. 6 minus 3 gives me 3, so I know my range is 3. The idea of going golfing at a golf range is not how long does it take me to get through it, because it's not 18 holes. I stand here and I hit it and I see how far I can go. The golf range is there to say, okay, you're going to measure from the 0 to wherever the ball lands, how far did it go? So range from smallest to largest number in my data set, just simply subtract them, and that's going to give me my answer. So now, let's get into the first scenario that they give me. It says, Kara made a paper airplane. She flew her airplane 6 times and recorded how long it stayed in the air during each flight. The times and seconds for the flights are 5.8, 2.9, 6.7, 1.6, 2.9, 4.7. What are the mean, the median, and the mode of the data? The mean is this. Well, what's the mean? We already know what the mean is. They've highlighted it in yellow. They've given me my definition afterwards. But once again, it's taking the data set, adding them together for a total, dividing by how many are there. So when I do that math, when I think about finding the mean and what it means I'm going to find the average. So I'm going to add all of those together, and then I'm going to divide by how many are there. And how many are there? Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of data in my math problem. So when I know there are 6 pieces of data, and then I get my handy dandy calculator, now that the problem's written out, I just have to enter it in and make sure that I add the decimal each time in the right place. When I'm typing it in and hit equals, I should get 24.6, or 24 and 6/10 divided by 6. So then when I get my total, then I have to show my division problem so that I know how I'm getting my mean. Once again, my numerator goes inside my box. I got 24 and 6/10 as my numerator. It goes inside my division box. My denominator is my divisor on the outside. And I divide to get a quotient of 4.1, or 4 1/10. So my answer for my mean is 4 1/10. Then it says to order the numbers from least to greatest. So one of the things that you'll see when we get into the next couple examples is we're going to start with ordering them from least to greatest. Anytime I do mean, median, mode, and range, I put them in order from least to greatest. It makes my several steps a lot easier than writing it all down once from the math problem and adding them together and then having to rewrite them in a different order. But once I have them in order from least to greatest, starting at 1 and 6/10, going up to 6 and 7/10, then I have to find the middle. How many did I have? I have 6. Remember what the 6 was? That for the median, that was finding it by doing an extra math step. So I have to do my process of elimination and cross them out one at a time. And I see that in the center that I have 2.9 and 4.7. Since it's an even number, I'm going to have two different numbers. And once again, that means I basically average the two center numbers. I add them together for their total, and I divide by 2. And when I do that, I see that I have 2.9 and 4.7. So I add 2.9 and 4.7 together, and I know I'm going to divide by 2. Those two added together give me 7.6, or 7 and 6/10. So 7 and 6/10 divided by 2 is what? That's when I then show my work. 7.6, or 7 and 6/10 divided by 2 is going to give me 3.8. 3.8 is going to be my median of my number set. Then when I look at my mode, there was only one number that was mentioned more than one time. I have a 2.9 and a 2.9 that are side by side. And since there are two of them there, I know that it occurs twice, so it has to be my mode, the one that is there the most often. So I have a mean of 4.1, 3.8, and I have a mode, the one that is repeated the most, as 2.9. If it asked me to do the range then, with them in order from least to greatest, I would just simply take 6.7 and subtract 1.6, and I would see that my range is 5.1. But it doesn't, so we're moving on. Mrs. O'Donnell's class has a fundraiser for a field trip to a wildlife preservation. 5 of the donations are $15, $25, $30, $28, $27. Find the mean, the median, and the mode. Now, it's always good to write down that type of information so you can go back to it and you understand what's being asked. Once again, the mean means the average, the median is the middle, the mode is what's there the most often. If you haven't taken notes up to this point. So when I start with finding the mean, now, I'm going to skip this step here because I'm going to do it since I'm beginning my math step. I don't see any reason to have to list all of these here and then divide by the number that's there and then have to reorder them. If I put them in order the first time, then I just go back to that line of information. So I'm going to put them in order from least to greatest. I would suggest that you do that every single time you have a mean, median, mode, and range question. Putting them in order then, I have 15 as my smallest number, a 25, and you could always cross them out after you have written them down. Then the 27, then the 28, then the 30. How many are there? Well, there are 5 there. So I know to find my mean then, I'm going to take that, I'm going to add them all together, I'm going to divide by 5, handy dandy calculator, I type in my 5 numbers, adding them all together, and what do I get? Well, hopefully you would get 125. I'm dividing by 5 because there are $5 amounts that are listed in my data set in my question. And then I show my division. 125 of my total divided by the 5 pieces of data that are there gives me a median or an average or a fair balance point of 25. Well, when I look then at my median, I've already listed them in order from least to greatest, so I don't need to relist it here. I'm just going to simply stick with that one. What's in the middle? Well, I go off and off and off and off, and I have one that's left. Since it is indeed an odd number, then I know it's just simply going to be the middle one. Now, I wrote them down there just to fill in the blanks. I just have to stick with that one there. When I look at the fact that it's odd, then I just need the middle number. So I could just circle the middle number there, or if you want to rewrite it and circle the middle number, that works as well. But that tells me that my median, since it's odd, it's just the one that's left in the center, what's in order from least to greatest, that is my median. Well, what is my mode then? Well, what number is repeated most often? There isn't one, is there? There's not one there at all. So I don't have a mode. There is no mode on that answer. And that, the words no mode, is my answer. Seems a little crazy, seems a little wackadoodle, but that is the way it goes. Alright, so let's look at example 2 then. Example 2 talks about Keith and his survey that he gives to his class. It says Keith surveys his classmates about how many brothers and sisters they have. 6 of the responses were 1, 3, 1, 2, 2, and 0. A single lonely child all by themselves. Find the mean, median, and mode of the data. So once again, as I'm writing them down for the first time to do the math, I'm going to put them in order from least to greatest. That way I just have to use that line of information and I don't have to do it again down here. So I put them in. I have a 0. I can cross it out so I can keep track. A 1, a 1, a 2, a 2, and then a 3. Do I have them all there? Well, it says that I had 6 different students that were asked, or 6 different responses, and I have 6 numbers, so I would say yes indeed, I have them all. I know that I'm going to find the average or the mean of them, so it tells me I'm going to add them all together, divide by how many are there. So I add to get my total. 0 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3 equals, on my handy dandy calculator, going to be 9. When I divide then by the 6 that's there, if I started to divide, I would see, well, I have an uneven number. So what we have is, it's not that someone has a half of a sister or a half of a brother. We're just simply saying that out of those 6 students, there were a total of 9 siblings, and that average is 1.5 siblings. So I get my 9 as my total, divided by my 6, which is my denominator. 9 divided by 6 does give me 1.5. Now they're already listed in order from least to greatest, so it should make my middle number a lot easier to do. I include my 0, and that's where this is important, because I had to divide by 6, but it also keeps them in order, and I can figure out what my middle number is. And when I cancel off, I see that I have 2 numbers that are left. So once again, when I have 2 numbers left, it's because I have an even number in my data set. And when there's an even number in my data set, I take the 2 middle ones, I add them together, 1 plus 2, and I divide by 2. Always dividing by 2 when I'm finding the median, because I only take the 2 middle numbers. 1 plus 2 is 3, divided by 2, 3 divided by 2, well, that gives me the exact same answer that I had up there. It's not included in my data set. There's not 1.5 siblings in my data set, but I just happen to have the same answer. Don't ever think that my mean is the same as my median. It's not. But every once in a while, I will see the same number repeated as 1, 2, or even all 3 pieces of information. When I look at it then, I see that there are 2 numbers that are mentioned the same amount of times, which is twice, my 1 and my 2. So that tells me that when I have my 1 and my 2, that I can indeed have more than one mode, as long as they're both shared the same amount. Now it doesn't mean that one number is written down 5 times and one number is written down 4 times. and everything else is written down once, it doesn't mean that the 5 and the 4 are my mode. The one that is there the most has to be my mode. They both are there 2 times, so I have 2 modes to that question, 1 and 2. Going on, the share and show. All right, so Terrence records the number of emails that he receives per day. During 1 week, he receives 7, 3, 10, 5, 5, 6, and 6 emails. What are the mean, median, mode of the data set? Once again, they're not dealing with range, but I would just simply take the largest number, the smallest number, subtract them, and I would get my range. But I'm going to do what first? My first step should always be, when I'm doing mean, median, mode, and range, is to put them in order from least to greatest. So that's how I've ordered them. I have a 3, and I could cross it off, so I know that I've included it. And a 5 and another 5. A 6 and another 6. And then all the way back over here was a 7, and then my third number was a 10. I have them all in order, 7 days in a week. I have 7 numbers listed, so I'm good to go. Finding my mean, getting my total, a handy-dandy calculator, add them all together equals, well, what does it equal? It equals 42. How many days are in a week? How many pieces of information are in my data set? In this one there are 7, so I'm going to divide by 7. 42 divided by 7 is what? Well, 42 divided by 7 is 6, because I know back in 3rd grade we learned our multiplication facts. 6 times 7 is 42. Or my handy-dandy calculator, enter in my top number, divided by my bottom number, or enter in my dividend, divided by my divisor, and I get that it is indeed 6. So I know my mean is 6, and then I look at my median. I have a 7, it's an even number, so all I know is I just need to cross them off and get to the middle one. That's going to be my median. So I cross them right to left, right to left, right to left, and I see that in the middle, I have a 6, and since it's an odd number of data, then it's just my median. I don't have any math to do. What about my mode? Well, on my mode, I have 2 numbers that are up there 2 times, and the repeating of it twice is the largest repeating that I have. So I know that my mode, notice that they give you in parentheses an S, because it's not just saying there's 1, there could be more than 1. So I know that my modes are 5 and 6. If I wanted to do the range, then the range would be taking my largest number, subtracting my smallest number. 10 minus 3 would tell me that my range is 7. On my next one then, Julie goes to several grocery stores. She researches the price of 12-ounce bottles of juice. Find the mean, median, mode of the prices shown. Well, where are the prices? The prices are in my graphic source, in my data chart. So I have to look at those. And my first thing that I should do is what? Hopefully in your head you thought, put them in order from least to greatest. Because that's the easiest way to do these problems. So I could cross them off in my data chart. As I go through, I have a 95 cents, a 99 cents, a 99 cents, $1.09, $1.25, and $1.99. Do I have them all? Whether there's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 times 2 is 6, so there's 6 in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do indeed have them all. So then, handy-dandy calculator, punch in the numbers, adding them, you should get that their total is $7.26. When I take my $7.26, then I have to divide by how many are there to get my mean. Because mean means average. And $7.26 divided by 6, anytime I have a decimal, once again, I raise the decimal directly where it is. Then I divide by the 6. 6 goes into 7 one time with 1 left over. 6 goes into 12 2 times with 0 left over. 6 goes into 6 one time. Or my handy-dandy calculator, 7.26 divided by 6 equals, and it will show me 1.21. So my mean, or my average, is $1.21. I plug it into my answer line. What is the median? Well, once again, I have 6, so that tells me that it's an even number of data, so I'm going to have to do that one math step. I find the middle 2 numbers, cross them off, and I see that 99 cents and $1.09 are my middle 2. So I have to add them together, and divide by 2 to do my middle number. When I add them together, I get $2.08. $2.08 divided by 2 tells me that my median, my middle number, is $1.04. So $1.04 is going to be my median of all the prices that she found. And then my mode, I look for one that's repeated more than once, and I look for the one that's repeated the most often, because mode is the same thing as most. And when I find that there's only one that's repeated more than one time, and that's 99 cents, then I know that my mode is indeed 99 cents. So hopefully we've been paying attention and following along. It is now your turn to work through these problems. So I want you to, or problem, answer number 3, show all of your work that I have shown you so that you get all the points that you can get, and do as I ask you to do and as required for your homework. Find the information for this one. It is your turn. Pause the video and come back when you have solved it. Hopefully you have all of this chart filled out in your book. You read that we're talking about TJ. He's training to run the 200-meter dash, one of the races that I ran in high school, and that's a pretty good speed. It's not a great speed, but it's pretty good. It's not bad at all. If he is practicing as he's warming up, then we're going to find the mean, the median, the mode, and it doesn't ask about the range, but you could find it by, once again, subtracting the largest number by the smallest number and finding the range of his information. First thing that I should see on your assignment, if I was grading this and making sure that you're following along, is that you have listed your numbers in order from least to greatest, because that's the easiest way to do these. So if I put them in order from least to greatest, I have my 22.3, my 22.4, once again I can cross those off once I wrote them down, my 22.5, my 23.3, and then my slowest day of 24.5. To find my mean, add them all together. So that's where your calculator comes in real handy. 22.3 plus, all of the different numbers would show you that you get 115 seconds in total. So what was the average speed that he was able to run in? Well, there are 5 pieces of data in my chart. So I take my 115 and divide by 5, and that tells me his average speed running the 200-meter dash is 23 seconds. Well, what's my median? Well, I have 5 pieces of information, right? So that's the easy one. I just have to eliminate from left to right until I get to the center number. So off and off, I get 22.5 as my middle number. So that has to be my median. And then my mode. Which one is up there the most often? Which one is repeated? No mode at all. There's not one that's repeated. So your answer should be no mode. That's all there is to the assignment. It's not difficult. There's just several steps to it. If you followed along with the video, took your notes, you know exactly what I expect to see on your homework assignment to give you full credit while you're answering it. So you have on page 285, questions 2 through 6, and then you only have 5 once again on the back, which has been nice. We eliminated one problem for the past couple of lessons. One fewer thing to do is homework. It's designed to take only 30 minutes of the class lesson to get your time in to get your assignment done, and then focus in on Moby Max if you're not finished. If there are any of them that you have questions on, please come and ask. Just remember, finding the mean is adding the total, dividing by how many pieces of data is there. Finding the median is finding the middle number. Finding the mode, finding which one is repeated the most often. Range isn't in the lesson, but once again, it's taking the largest number and subtracting the smallest number from it. All of these are done the easiest way, and as I have asked you to do, by putting them in order from least to greatest on my paper, then doing the work. If you have any questions then as you're doing your assignment, please come and ask.